Hey you guys, it's Cassie, Dust to Roses. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to part 2 of my Make a Journal with Me series for Christmas. So today we're going to be finishing off the cover of the journal. We're going to make the basic cover embellishment, and then we will be also adding the eyelet to the cover and pockets to the inside. So what you'll need for this video, if you want to follow along exactly as I'm crafting, you will need a vintage label or a postcard or some other type of embellishment or a focal image for the front cover. You'll need an envelope. So I have a couple of different options here. I'm not really sure which one I'll use. I have this first day cover, but in order to use it on this journal, I would likely have to remove the stamp, which is not ideal. So I'm not sure that I'll use that one. I also have just an envelope that I've coffee stained. So if you don't have a vintage envelope, this one is actually originally vintage. But if you don't have a vintage envelope handy, you can always coffee stain an envelope that you do have on hand. So a plain white envelope would then become kind of interesting and distressed. So honestly, I think I'm going to use this one. Yeah. And then you will need, I just have like this little scrap of fabric that's left over from making my journal collection for Christmas. So you don't need very much to do this method, but yeah, I'll show you guys a few different options. And then of course you'll need eyelets and an eyelet setter, and then some fabric to create our pockets on the inside of the cover. I am going to show you guys a no-sew version of this tutorial just because I kind of said this was going to be a very beginner-friendly tutorial, and I know a lot of you guys don't have a sewing machine, or you feel like nervous about using the sewing machine, and so I'm going to show you guys how to make this journal with no sewing, and that way it is actually really beginner friendly. Okay, so to get started, oh, and also I forgot to mention, any kind of small embellishments like stamps. I know if you guys got one of my journal kits, it actually came with this packet of, which I had opened them all. Originally they were in this packet. You got these little tiny labels, and then a bunch of stamps, you guys. So of course pick out any stamps that you might like to use. I really like this partridge in a pear tree, so I might use that one. But yeah, anyway, any kind of stamp embellishments or fabric, if you want to add like a ruffle to your cover embellishment or layer up some fabrics, of course pick out any fabrics you might like to use. So I'm just going to set those aside because I might want to use them. So let's get started. I am going to reattach my envelope. When I coffee stained it, the glue kind of released. So I'm just going to glue it back together. Again, I'm using Aleene's tacky glue just because the tack of it is actually very sticky. And it holds really well, so. Put too much glue on. So yeah, hopefully you guys are all doing really well. I am feeling so much better. I know I don't sound all that much better, but yeah, I'm feeling so much better, and I just really feel productive again, and I haven't really felt that way. Like, I've kind of powered through, but I haven't really felt good in like a month. Man, it's been a long time, so I'm really, really pleased to be feeling good today. Okay, so, sorry, I'm like moving on to the next step without explaining. So the next step is to add the fabric to our journal cover embellishment. And so basically what we want to do is create kind of a hinge that, or like a second spine, if you will, that will close our little cover embellishment onto the cover. So we want the right side to be facing outward on our fabric. And since this is a no-sew version, I am going to not sew. If you are sewing and you want to sew, I recommend just adding a stitch line right here along the fabric. And it's just going to be like a faux stitch because obviously you probably can't stitch through your hardcover. But I find that that just makes it look really like pieced together and adds some extra texture that wouldn't be there otherwise. So I'm just going to add some glue. Just going to add some glue right here to the cover. And like pretty generously, really. Oops. And then I'm just going to do the same thing and just kind of smear it around with my pinky. By the way, if you guys missed the first part of this tutorial, I've added a card in the top right corner of the video if you want to go back and check out the first part of the actual tutorial. I've linked that there, and you can start from the beginning. And I've also linked the entire video series in the description box of the video, so if you want to go back and check out the supplies list, you can do that as well. And that video also has access to my free digital kit. So if you're watching this video in November or December of 2021, you will have access to that kit. Yeah, after December 31st, I'm going to remove the link to that. Okay, so next step is, okay, so if, going back, if you were stitching, adding some faux stitches, before you glue the fabric piece to your cover, you would want to stitch this onto your envelope, and you can obviously add, you know, like a little tuck spot using your fabric and your envelope. Alternatively, if you wanted to use a little bit longer piece of fabric, you could create like a large pocket and just stitch along the outside borders of the envelope. So if you go back and watch my flip through of my Christmas journal, which I've added a card if you want to check that out, I did kind of the same little tutorial, or same cover style as this tutorial. The only difference was I covered the front with some vintage wrapping paper, and then I used like the full piece of paper, or a full piece of fabric to cover, and created a pocket from that. So a few different options there. You can either use the strip like I'm using, which will allow the original cover to still be seen, or the full piece of fabric. But since I'm not stitching, I am just going to add a line of glue, and I'm going to create kind of a tuck spot, or a little half pocket here. And this will also serve to hold the flap closed on our envelope. So I'm just going to close this fabric down onto the envelope, and it will just be in exactly the right spot. So see, this little cover flap can tuck in to the fabric there, but while it's drying, I'm not going to tuck it in because it'll create kind of a lifted area in the fabric. I'm just making sure that's pressed down really well. And I am going to let it dry open so that the two parts don't glue together if any of the glue has seeped through. So yeah, we're going to flip it over right now while that's drying and actually create our inner pockets. So I'm thinking about using this fabric. So this was from a vintage tablecloth that I found at an estate sale, and kind of funny, yesterday I was thrifting and I saw like a hand towel that was in the same the same pattern, so I thought that was so cool. But it was like really faded and had obviously been bleached or something, so I did not get it, but I just thought it was very serendipitous that I saw that at a thrift store. So I do want just the Christmas tree to show here, and so I'm just gonna just kind of eyeball it. It doesn't have to be perfect. And yeah, just cut along. I'm gonna cut a whole strip off because I'm gonna make a pocket in the back as well. And I kind of like the idea of having just a little bit of this on the top. I just think that's fun. And I can kind of mimic that same, this waffle pattern fabric is kind of shrunk a little bit, just okay. So before you stitch or glue this down, you can add any like faux stitching, just like we did on the front cover. You can I cut that one shorter somehow. Maybe this pattern is shorter. I don't know how that happened, but that's okay. We're just gonna trim this a little bit more. Not that they have to be exactly the same. I mean, when you add the pages into the journal, you wouldn't even be able to tell, but yeah, it's just kind of an OCD thing for me. What was I saying? Oh, you can add like an eyelet or a ribbon, like a little bow or something like that to the inside. I think I'll actually add some of my stamps. I just think that would be really fun to have a few little embellishments on the inside, just kind of layered up like it's been pasted together and kind of collaged. And so I'm actually going to use one of these little cigarette tins to store my small bits while we're working. Of course I should have used the other one because these don't fit. So I really like this stamp. I'm just trying to go with the same like color theme overall of like the red, the golds, the greens, and white. And that one. I'm gonna glue this on. Just love these little wine labels. Again, just using my Aleene's tacky glue. You can use glue of choice. If you're using the textured wallpaper, I would not recommend using glue stick, however. I just have not had much success in getting it to stick. So I just kind of place it on there. Some of these stamps are like, they're mostly on paper, and they'll usually peel off pretty easily. If they don't, you can always soak them off, or just trim them down really close, which I think I might just do that. Which, with the background being white, it probably doesn't matter all that much trimming down. Look, I was good. I used my paper scissors. Yeah. But yeah, with the background being white, it doesn't matter all that much to trim down that much, but again, just I want to do it well. My glue is starting to get empty, so I'm not gonna let it drip all the way back down. I'm trying to be really good and use, you know, things that everyone would hopefully have in their stash. I feel like most people would have stamps and some sort of a label, or, you know, fabric and glue and all that, so. Yeah, again, if you want to have like the faux stitch lines, you can always just run a stitch line around the outside borders of that. You can also choose to have your fabric coming out of the journal a bit. Mine kind of does, like you can see that just kind of on the outside, and over time it's going to fray a little bit. So I just think that's going to be a little shabbier as time goes on, which is good, I think. So yeah, again, just generously adding glue right along where we need to glue or attach our little pocket. So I did want to actually add a little eyelet here. Forgot. Oh, I don't know if that's gonna work. hole to add a ribbon or a bow. I think that would be really cute. Or charm even, maybe. Haven't really decided what I want to add yet, but I know I want it. So I'm gonna use one of my gold stars. Should not have glued that back down yet. Real life crafting with Cassie here. I never really have a plan until I'm actually recording. I get inspired. I'm not actually sure how well this weave is going to hold up to having that there, but it'll be fine. It's fine. Okay. So now, hopefully that's gonna hold. I should put it right on top of the tree. I guess I could take that off and add another. No, we'll leave it. I think it's fine. Okay. Good thing about A-lanes is that it takes forever to dry, so we're fine. Okay, so let's go back to the outside. That should be fairly well set now. So yeah, see, you can also add like a little piece of lace or something like that, which I think I might do. Just gonna grab a piece. There's a big card with all this white lace on it. I'm not being very generous with this glue on this part because the lace is a fairly open pattern. So I'm just adding a little bit and kind of smushing it around with my finger. Just gonna press the lace on. If you want to create a top loading pocket, you could seal this closed and reopen the top end, and that way you would have like a top loading pocket there. And then also that would allow you to add an eyelet for closure. But I was honestly thinking about adding one to the front cover to add a ribbon to tie the journal closed. And I have not decided yet. But that was the intent of including this velvet ribbon to have a tie closure. So I am just gonna glue on my label. Your fingers are sticky. Oops. See, this one peels off easier. And so other options, you could do, well, obviously this is landscape orientation. You could do a little picture, either of those pictures. You could use a greeting card. All the kits came with a little greeting card or a book page with an interesting image. Well, those are different options. This again was not a label that came in the kit. I only had 2 and decided to use one for this journal. So, but I just think it's perfect for kind of what I envision for the journal. So yeah, now it's starting to come together. Again, I am gonna add a little bit of an embellishment. These are just kind of scraps that I have in my stash left over from making my Christmas collection. I'm just gonna add a tiny bit of lace, this hand crocheted lace. Maybe, I don't know, like, I love this ticking fabric. But I just feel like with these stripes, nah, we'll do it. Let's do it. I think what I might do is, after I glue this down, which I probably will use Fabri-Tac for this part, just because, I mean, obviously can still use Aleene's, but I don't want to be sitting here forever while you guys watch me hold this. And Aleene's will definitely take a while to hold. Coming out. Oh, did I do that right? Yeah, that's the right side. Okay, so to glue a ruffle, what I do, if I'm ever gluing ruffles, just run a bit of glue. Like, obviously this has been kind of finger pressed at this point. You can see where the ruffle is supposed to go. So I just run a bit of glue just right along where it would be held by a stitch. And usually I stitch down the middle of my ruffles, but in this case I kind of want it to be attached in the same place as the lace, so it's not ruffled in the center in this case. So I discovered the birds that were flocking outside. It's a murder of crows. A murder of crows that likes to roost in the tree line outside my window. And they are very, very loud. But they're not here today, so... So I'm just going to layer it up to where this kind of hangs off a little bit more. Just adding some glue. Like that. And finally, maybe I don't want to do that. Do that. I kind of like that. It's not the weird oozing out phase where it's hard to get the glue to start coming out and then it just all comes out. Might add on one of my buttons. This button, I'm going to use my aliens, and then I'm also going to add some stitches by hand. Just because I want it to stick very well. And the back of my button is actually hollow. Okay, needle. I know I have one. Maybe. I don't even have a needle in my needle book. Guys, I just don't have it together today, apparently. This is so odd. Okay. Well, so yeah, anyway, I am gonna just add some stitching with that, and I'll probably use some embroidery floss and just tie a bow on the outside. And yeah, so let's do the eyelet. So I'm gonna do a single eyelet and actually run 2 cords through the same eyelet. So you could evenly space 2 holes, especially if you've created a wider spine, and then run 2 cords through each one, so that you can have 4 signatures in the same journal cover. My journal cover actually has a narrower spine, like that's only about 1.25 inches, maybe 1.5 inches at the most. So I'm just gonna run 1 eyelet with 2 cords through so that I can get both signatures in the journal. So you can measure. I'm just going to eyeball it like I always do. And then my eyelet setter, I'm going to set the punch to 1/4 inch so that it's the same on the top and the bottom. Just eyeballing it, holding it flat with my hands or my free hand. And because we've got so many layers of fabric and glue, that just punches right out as if it's like paper. I did a 1/4 inch depth because my journal doesn't have much height to it. Obviously if you got one of the taller book covers, you can do a little bit more depth, like maybe, you know, 1/2 inch, which would probably be better. But I think this is going to be fine for this journal. Again, I'm going to use my gold stars. You could also, well, you may not have the same eyelets as me. It's extremely stiff. Okay, so there's our binding holes, and let's just make our little closure hole. I'm gonna reset this to maybe 3/8, and roughly the middle. And another gold star. Maybe. If we can get it to go. Okay. Okay, so I think that's it, guys. I think that's our cover completed. And I mean, we might go back and, I mean, obviously I'm gonna make a like a little journaling card or a tag or something to attach or put in the pocket or tuck spot, and then some things for the inside cover. But that's it for the cover. And in the next video, we will be putting the pages together and kind of talking about page count and all of that good stuff. So hopefully you've enjoyed this one. Again, I would love to see what you've made. The hashtag is a very merry journal, and I've linked that in the also in the description box. I've put that in the description box as well. So yeah, if you are on Instagram and you're crafting along with me, definitely post with that hashtag so that everyone can see what we're all making. But until next time, hope you have a great rest of your day and happy crafting.